Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIcke.com.
I won't go into a big long-winded introduction to our only guest tonight. You know what I think of him. For nearly 30 years he's been researching, he's been working, travelling the world, uncovering the depths of the conspiracy, the global enslavement that he's written so well about over the last 25 to 30 years. Terrific guy. He's going to be on tour for much of 2016 and 2017. All right. Check out davidicke.com for all the dates on where he's going to be on tour. I've got to ask him because I believe the warm-up events on the Isle of Wight, I believe tickets are just about to run out for those warm-up events. I'll ask him about that in a second. His new book, Phantom Self, is absolutely fantastic. It's a revelation. I urge you to get it. Check out or go to davidicke.com to find out where to buy it. Terrific book. I think he's in the prime of his life. He's in the form of his life anyway. Let's welcome back to this programme the great David Icke. David, welcome back. How are you?
Cheers, Rich. I'm good, mate. Yeah, good.
You're really, really looking forward to this forthcoming world tour, aren't you? You're really excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, when I did the last one around the world in 2011, I came back exhausted, and I thought, well, am I going to do this again? But all these years later, I'm flying, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it because I think, you know, its timing is perfect in the way that it's fallen, because people are now in far greater numbers than I've ever known, open to looking at the world and themselves in a different way. And I mean, the London event at Shepherd's Bush Empire, where, of course, 25 years ago I did the Wogan show, that all the tickets to that have gone. There's only 36 left for the one in the Isle of Wight you mentioned, and the tickets for Manchester, which is not until January 2017, the interest in them is just incredible this far ahead. So, and the same with others around the world. So it's an exciting time, really, because, you know, when I look back to 1990, 1991, I mean, you know, as I used to say years ago, I couldn't fill a phone box. So yeah. It's just a confirmation that this awakening, not the vast majority, of course, but this awakening is global, and it's not a myth. It's not some I'm going to kid myself, it's happening, so I feel better. It is actually happening, and it's fantastic. But, you know, I think we're going to get into a few things tonight about, well, it's all right awakening to the fact that what's happening is not right, and there's manipulation going on, and there's money buying politics going on, but then there's also the need to be streetwise and to look deeper into what something appears to be on the surface. Because when you want to control a game, it's no good controlling one side. If you control one side, you influence the game. You don't control it. What this cabal is seeking to do, and always seeks to do, is in football terms, to control both sides and the referee. The referee in the shape of the judiciary and the media, etc., because then you control the outcome of the game. So people who only look at, say, the right, and it's all the right and it's all the money and all that, they're only got part of the picture, because it's no good controlling that and not controlling the opposition to that. And this is where genuine people need to get informed and look at information beyond the norm if they're going to get informed. Martin Luther King said that nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance. And sincere ignorance is, and by ignorance I mean unresearched, is just the easiest thing to manipulate. And people like the billionaire Rothschild frontman George Soros, who I'm sure we'll mention before the night is out, is a specialist in manipulating so-called progressive groups and the left of centre agenda to lead it in the direction that, in the end, has a cliff edge at the end of the path. But as you walk to the cliff edge, the trick is to persuade you're making a difference and you're fighting the system and you're challenging the system when the system is actually leading you to the cliff edge, because they have to control the opposition to control the game, and thus they create their own opposition. And what we've seen in the Middle East is all these Soros organizations, like the Open Society Institute, etc., training people to most effectively take part in civil resistance and civil disobedience, which manifested as the so-called Arab Spring. Well, that went well for the people, didn't it? That went well for the people in Tunisia and Libya and Syria and Egypt and so on. And now, this very day, we have protests in Washington, D.C. called Democracy Spring. And I think, this is a good example of what I'm talking about. It's a protest in Washington, which started today and is supposed to go on till the 18th, where people are taking part in civil disobedience, and some have pledged to get arrested. So we have mass arrests. And many of the organizations involved are funded by the same Soros network that funded the Arab Spring. And interestingly, on the 16th, as the Democracy Spring is winding down, there's another protest in Washington from the 16th to the 18th called Democracy Awakening. And many of the groups involved in that are funded by the network of guess who?
The usual suspects.
And Soros and others. And the point is that there's so many ironies if you don't get informed. These groups are saying that this protest is about ensuring that money doesn't buy access and power. But many of these groups who are behind this are funded by George Soros, a billionaire who uses money to buy access and power. So, but, a lot of the people who are genuine and will be on this protest, if you ask them about George Soros and his background and funding of the Arab Spring and funding of organizations involved in this Democracy Spring, they'd, as my mother used to say, they'd look at you gone out.
Yeah.
They wouldn't know what you were talking about. And like I say, you have the neocons in America who are well known, who are behind the Republicans, although it's not really a party thing, and were behind George Bush, etc. But you also have the democons, as I call them, and a similar group that control the Democrats. And key among them, or one of the key people among them, is George Soros. So you can see the same organizations controlling the game. I mean, one of the organizations behind the Democracy Spring is called MoveOn.org, which claims credit for the election of Obama. I don't know why it would. Now we'll see what unfolded. And of course, Obama was supported by Soros, who's now supporting Clinton. MoveOn.org has been massively influential in selling the climate change hoax. They claim credit for the cancellation of a Trump rally in Chicago that you might remember. And when you look at Democracy Awakening, this second group that's involved in this mass protest, the organization involves something called People for the American Way, among others. And People for the American Way was created in 1981 by something called the Tides Foundation. The Tides Foundation has received millions from Soros. And the Tides Foundation gave $4.4 million to an organization called Media Matters, another part of this so-called progressive net.
I used to deal with them. Yeah, I know all about Media Matters. Yeah.
Soros gave $1 million to Media Matters. And then you've got organizations like Human Rights Watch. I mean, Human Rights Watch, who could complain at a name like that? But in 2010, Richie, Soros gave Human Rights Watch $100 million.
Why would you do that? That's a brilliant statement. That why?
To expand their operations around the world was the reason. But you see, when you look at this web of organizations, you've got organizations directly funded by people like Soros, who which then fund organizations. But the organizations funded by Soros organizations then fund other organizations that support the Soros and cabal agenda. So it's so important that people get informed about how this all works. And the sad thing is that so-called progressives, as they're called in America, or people of the left, they have this tunnel vision where they won't break out of the tunnel vision into the bigger picture. You know, it's still, the system's okay as long as we get the right people in. But it's the system that has to go. And it was sad for me, really, to well, not really sad. I mean, it kind of happened. It happens. But sad with the tunnel vision of this focus on getting rid of Cameron because of this Panama Papers scandal, as if getting rid of Cameron will actually make a difference worth making, because just another puppet will come in. And it's the system that has to go. And for the system to go, people need to break out of the programming that focuses them on the system. Because, you know, when you look at the right and the left, and then you look at the system is actually, they are extensions of the same system. They just want to tinker with it a little bit. The whole thing's got to go. It's no good talking about freedom and then supporting staying in the European Union. It's no good talking about fairness of finance and not focusing upon a situation where private banks, in the end owned by the same network, can create money out of nothing and thus control the entire financial system of the world and dictate, therefore, the choices or lack of choice of the vast mass of the people. These are the things that are missed. It's so far but no further. And it's so important that people of the left and progressives in America stop being so naive and stop being so unquestioning and start to ask, what is the outcome? What is the outcome of what is going on here? And it's the classic line, the antidote to problem, reaction, solution. Who benefits from what is happening? Because this is an important point, I would suggest, that we look at this situation with these Panama Papers, and on the face of it, if you only take it on face value, it's exposing people and politicians for trying to avoid their own laws. However, this is how it works. If you have an agenda and it has reached a point where it needs to go into a more extreme stage, then you need to discredit the status quo, even though that status quo has served your agenda brilliantly up to this point. Thus, you need to get support for going to the more extreme next level. You need to gather support and therefore demonize the system that's got you this far, if you follow my drift. And so, for instance, if you want to have a global taxation system, which is what the plan is, if you want a global central bank dictating all finance, then if you discredit the system that is, even though, like I say, it served you brilliantly up to this point, then you need to discredit that so you can offer solutions to it, to stop these things happening, which are solutions that take you onto your more extreme level of even more centralization of control of these of finance and other aspects of things. But if you have not done the research to understand A, where this is supposed to go, and B, the methods and techniques used to get us there of manipulation and perception manipulation, and even, let's have a C, which is understanding the personalities involved that keep coming up over and over and over again in situation after situation after situation after situation. Then groups that are funded by George Soros will stand out, and you'll say, hold on a minute, let's have a look at this. But if you don't know the background, you won't do that. You'll take it on face value. And so this is why, I say the programming has to go, the perception programming has to go before the system can go. And if the system doesn't go and it's tinkered with, then we're going to go on as we have been all along.
Right, 26 minutes past the hour. That's outstanding. We were exploring some of that in the programme in the last few days as well, and we're going to talk in a second about Jeremy Corbyn. And you won't be surprised that a lot of the questions coming in today to you are about Jeremy Corbyn and the Panama Papers. Before we do that, though, something which will amuse you, Alan Britton, who's a musician and a great supporter of your work, says, Richie, it's great to have David on. Could you ask him, seeing as we are in a holographic universe with a corrupt computer program on Earth right now, does he know where the Control-Alt-Delete button is to reboot the stupidity so we can speed up the wakey? His tongue is firmly in his cheek when he says that, but thanks very much for the email, Alan. And there is, if I say young lady, it sounds patronising, but she's a young lady who's a huge follower of davidicke.com, has got nearly all your books and is desperately keen for you to eventually come back to India, and you might do that, who knows, on the forthcoming Worldwide Wake Up Tour.
We're trying, yeah.
I know you're trying, I know you're looking, I know Jamie's looking, but it's her birthday today. I know you want to wish her a happy birthday.
Himanshi, happy birthday, Himanshi, and congratulations on being so awake, and for being so awake so early in your life. It's just what we need to happen. And when you compare Himanshi with students at an American college who said they were literally traumatized a couple of weeks ago by seeing Trump 2016 written on the pavement, you can see the scale and the vast spectrum that human consciousness is capable of. Himanshi, happy birthday, and many of them.
That's marvellous. Yeah, I think she just turned 16 or 17. Right. So we echo that. Yeah, great. She's been on she phoned into the phone-in show a couple of times, had a lot to say. Is much further down the road of understanding a lot of this stuff than I am, and I mean that sincerely. Great lady. Thanks, Himanshi. 28 minutes past the hour. Now, you've always been, I'm not kissing your arse here, but you always have been incredibly fair and incredibly balanced. And I remember when Jeremy Corbyn was running for the leadership of the Labour Party, you were incredibly fair to him, and you were very complimentary to the things that he'd been saying over the years. And you were saying, it's nice, at the very least, you said, I don't want to misquote you, but you said, whatever happens with this man, whatever he does or doesn't do or say or doesn't say, it's nice that we'll have, at least for a while anyway, somebody asking about brutal austerity, somebody asking about this, that, the sorts of things that you talk about on davidicke.com. And I suppose for a time he did it. But there's been a lot of disappointment in Jeremy Corbyn. I've expressed a little bit of it. Maybe I went a bit too far in some of the programmes. Maybe it's because I like the guy. I think I do. I think I like some of the things he said as well. And I think he's probably a principled man deep down. But you and I were speaking this morning, and you've had me thinking all day, because you talked about kind of being bounced into line or drawn into line, but you didn't put it like that. You put it in a way that you've described it in your books. I'm not going to mention the word you use because you're going to use it now to describe him. Where are you now with Jeremy Corbyn and others like him? I suppose nearly, what is it now, David? About 8 months, I suppose, into the job. What do you think?
Well, I think it's been disappointing because Jeremy Corbyn was saying I didn't agree with everything he was saying, but Jeremy Corbyn was a breath of fresh air when he was running for the leadership in the things that he was saying and the passionate way he was saying them. And when he first became leader and said about his job, he I think he is a genuine man, but he started out the way I think he meant to go on, and then we had this vote on whether they should send planes to bomb Syria. I mean, Outer Mongolia is about the only one isn't bombing Syria at some point.
Yeah,
and so we better get involved, and it was ludicrous, and he was right in his opposition to it. Then we had that embarrassing Hilary Benn speech that got a standing ovation from the other side, a lot of it, and Corbyn lost the vote. But losing a vote when you are arguing from a principled stance is not a defeat. It's a victory, especially in politics. The defeat is when you win the vote by arguing from an unprincipled stance. In other words, arguing against what you really think. And I tell you what, I just a quick aside, but very relevant. I spoke years ago, I've done it a number of times, but the first time I spoke at the Oxford Union Debating Society, which is set up like the House of Commons, a very old debating society. What happens is a couple of students speak for the motion and a couple of students speak against it, and then they invite people from outside to do the same. And I watched these students passionately arguing for and against this motion this night. And then I was chatting to them afterwards, or one of them, and I realized that the motion he was arguing for, he actually didn't agree with. You would never know that. And it's no coincidence that so many people go through the Oxford Union Debating Society and into politics. I mean, Ted Heath did, for goodness sake. And it's this ability to argue as if you mean it when you don't really mean it. When you're arguing in terms of a party line, which you don't agree with, but it's the party line, so that's what you have to do. So it was good to see that kind of politics challenged when Jeremy Corbyn spoke against the bombing of Syria. However, since then, there's been so many opportunities lost, and there's so many things that Jeremy Corbyn seems to be arguing for that are actually not what he would have argued for at one point before he became leader. For instance, in 1975, at the last time that we had a chance to vote to come out of the European Union, as it's now called, he voted against, as I did myself in 1975. And he's quoted, I've got a quote here from him, before he became leader: the creation of the post of president, this is of the European Union, is a triumph for the tenacity of the European long-sighters. The project, the European project, has always been to create a huge free market Europe with ever-limiting powers for national parliaments and an increasingly powerful common foreign and security policy. He also wrote, before he became leader, that there was a strong socialist argument against the Lisbon Treaty and the economic consequences that flow from it. And now we're seeing Jeremy Corbyn leading up, I say reluctantly, it seems reluctantly. In fact, there are stories I've been reading today of Labour MPs complaining that he's not vigorous enough in, pressing people to stay in the European Union in this referendum. But he is fronting up a party which is saying they must stay in. And then we have his brother, Piers Corbyn, who has demolished with others the whole background to human-caused climate change, which is simply a scam to transform global society through things like the United Nations Agenda 21, 2030, etc. And when you talked to Piers Corbyn recently, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you asked him about his brother supporting the whole idea of climate change and things need to be done about it, when his brother was saying the opposite, the answer seemed to indicate, if you remember it,
I do,
that basically you got to win the argument in the Labour Party. And recently we've had this stuff in the newspapers about anti-Semitic Labour MPs. Oh, no, not Labour MPs, some of them maybe, but Labour councillors and things like that.
And party members, yeah.
Labour activists and all these different people. Now, instead of, focusing on that in reply and saying, well, yeah, we're going to deal with it, we're not having it, and, all that stuff, there's another aspect to it, which is to use that to point out that it's not anti-Semitic to challenge the horrific behavior of the Israeli government in relation to the Palestinians. When I look at this, I see Jeremy Corbyn being, and this is the phrase that you were indicating earlier, I talked to you about today, being in a way vibrated into line by almost, certainly not being bold enough and sticking with what he believes rather than saying what he thinks is necessary for his party and for the media and what have you. And just speak your truth. Speaking your truth has an enormous power, which suppressing that to say what you think people want to hear or what you think you have to do in the circumstances does not have the same power. And I think that what's being misunderstood here and was shown in the tremendous support he got to become Labour leader is that what's being lost here is that there are larger and larger numbers of people who are actually open to hearing this stuff, to hearing this this truth spoken from integrity. The game is changing in that way. And what I see happening is he's being pulled into the game. And the phrase I'm using is vibrated into line. And what I mean by that is this. To understand the world of the seen, everything needs to be looked at in the world of the unseen. Because that's where the world of the seen comes from. And everything is an energy field. It's a vibrating frequency field of information, everything. And that includes politics, it includes Westminster. And that information field and its frequency is dictated by the thoughts, the emotions, the actions, the attitudes, the perceptions of people in that arena that are feeding those perceptions, etc., which all have a frequency into this frequency field we call politics and what we call in terms of a building, what we call the Westminster Parliament or the Congress, Capitol Hill in America, wherever. And so that is a vibrational field. And if you go into that field as a new MP or whatever, and you don't hold your integrity and you don't speak your truth and you start compromising your truth, which is what you see with politicians all the time, then what's happening is that energetic field we call Westminster or politics is vibrating you into line. It's vibrating you into its way of doing things. And there's something they talk about in science called entrainment. And that's what I'm talking about. And what that means is if you take three violins and you pluck them, the three of them, to the same note, and then you introduce another violin, either playing another note or no note, that fourth violin will start to vibrate, the strings will start to vibrate in sympathy and harmony with the dominant frequency, which is the three violins. And so when you go into a situation, and politics is a classic, then unless you hold your integrity, which holds your frequency, unless you speak your truth no matter what, which holds your frequency, and once you start compromising because of expediency, then what happens is you start to get pulled into the vibrational field of the collective, in this example, politics and the Westminster Parliament. And thus you get this process where people say years later, when someone's been maybe a top politician by then, and they'll say, look, mate, I knew that bloke before he went into politics. He was genuine. He wanted to make a difference. Now look at him. He is everything he went into Parliament to challenge. Why? Because he's been vibrated into harmony with the collective energetic field and all its perceptions, all its ways of doing things, all its lack of integrity, that collective has had created.
Kept in line, David. He's kept in line, basically.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. And you see, what Jeremy Corbyn did is, as a backbench MP, he overwhelmingly held that truth. He was challenging the establishment in that political situation. He was a rebel. He did say things that the party hierarchy didn't like, and so that was great. But this is the challenge that he has, and people like him have, is that when you become leader of a major political party, for instance, the pressure to vibrate into line, if you like, becomes greater, because you have this thing called, I want to get elected. Now, when you say, I want to get elected, what you're saying is, so what do I have to do to get elected? And that's when you can start making compromises to get elected, or you think will get you elected. And what that does, it starts to pull you onto what I call the postage stamp politics. And that is the postage stamp, which is the conventional wisdom in politics that you have to stand on to be elected. It's the postage stamp consensus. And it's that postage stamp now is so tiny that, before Corbyn came along, in his early days anyway, you had Labour and Conservative and Liberal Democrat leaders and the hierarchies standing basically on the same ground. It was called the consensus. And so there is this consensus idea that you have to be in that, you have to say those things, you have to stand for this, you have to stand for that, to be elected. Now, what I would like to see...
I hope we haven't lost David momentarily. It's at 15 minutes to the top of the hour. We might just have lost the line for a second. If we have done, we'll get it back. Don't panic. You're listening to The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIcke.com. You're back.
Hello, mate. I didn't know I'd gone for a while. I've been sitting here talking to myself.
And there with me. And you know, because you were broadcasting long before me, and you did radio. Not a lot of people know you did late night radio. You did everything. And one of the things you do when something like that happens is you spin away from the desk as quick as you can, and you go to the streaming computer to make sure you're still online and you're on air. And we were, and I knew, I said, he's he's gone down. Then it's not me.
I don't know. Where did I get to anyway?
Well, we were at. You hadn't lost me now. I was listening intently. We'd obviously talked about the entrainment. You had talked about. I was going to jump in and say to you, you know, there's a lot of frustration, and when he's criticised in the manner that you've been critical of what's happened to him, I've been obviously a lot more critical and a lot more immature in what I've said about him. It drives people up the wall, David, and they get upset because they've really hung on to him. They've really hung on to this belief because of the whirlwind ride that he had when he, you know, basically swept to the leadership of the Labour Party, and all the things he said and all the things he did. There was marvellous hope given. And when he's criticised like this, and you've not been so critical of him tonight really at all, you've been putting forward a very plausible theory. We've already gotten people tonight on Twitter and on email, and I can put them out there for people to see, who are disgusted at you and I. Now, I really, really, you know, like some of these people because they listen to the programme. I don't want to fall out with them. But rather than get annoyed with Corbyn for not saying things that he could have said, given the opportunities that you've just described that he's been given on national television. We talked about anti-Semitism. That's where we were up to just after that when we got cut off there. Rather than go after him, they go after those who criticise him and say, I can't believe you of all people. David Icke, I can't believe you of all people would have a go at Corbyn. Why are they like that? Why can't they? I don't want them to vent their rage against anybody, but why can't they turn that criticism on Corbyn? Why you or me or anybody else who's criticised him?
I don't know how I'll cope. No one's ever criticised me before.
Impervious to it.
Did I talk about postage stamp politics?
Yes, we were talking about postage stamp politics. Yeah.
I got into all that. Okay. The point is that what I'm saying about Jeremy Corbyn is I wish he'd be more bold. If that's something to be criticised for, then we really are up shit creek without a paddle. To be more bold and to say what he really believes, and not towing party lines and not keeping quiet because what will the media say and all that. You know, I think people are ready for someone in politics to speak their truth. And, you know, I know what people say. They say that he's just playing a waiting game.
Yeah, the waiting game, yeah.
He's got to get in first, and therefore, when he gets in, everything will be different. Well, I have to say I've heard all that before, and I'll tell you why. What happens if you start making compromises and compromises and compromises to get into power? The person who gets into power is not the person that set out to get into power. And that's the way it works. You've made so many compromises, you lose touch with yourself and who you really are. And so all I'm saying is, I just want to see someone, and Jeremy Corbyn has had this opportunity, to just go for it, to speak truth and to tell home truths about the world and what's going on, instead of thinking this mental gymnastics. What do I say? How do I say it? What do I leave out so that, you know, I won't get as criticised or I won't get as dismissed? We're past that point.
Way past it.
Does anyone really believe, as we head towards this transhumanist nightmare of control of people's thoughts, control of people's emotions and perceptions, as we move more and more into this tyrannical, centralized, fascist dictatorship, as we have more and more of our freedoms taken away by the day, by the week, when we have more and more surveillance so that there's almost nothing we can do that is not recordable or recorded. What are we going to do, ladies and gentlemen? Are we just going to wait for Jeremy Corbyn to get elected before something might happen? Do you know what that is? That is the classic manipulation technique, the classic holding position of sell them hope. what hope is always tomorrow. Hope is the carousel horse in front on the carousel that you never catch, no matter how fast the carousel moves. It's a holding position. Give them something to hope for, and then they'll accept what's happening now. And by the time they realize the hope was unfounded, then we'll be much further along in our agenda. How much more hope could have been sold by Obama 8 years ago? And it's been a holding position. Oh, yeah, well, Obama, hope, change. What has happened? The same old, same old, same old. But now we're 8 years further down the line. Where have been the anti-war movement in the United States that was all over the place during Bush? Where have they been during Obama? Nowhere. Why? Because hope, holding position. 8 years passed and lost. And if people believe that waiting for Jeremy Corbyn, and like I say, I'm not criticizing him as a person. I think he's a genuine man. I think he's in many ways trapped by circumstance, but you can get out of being trapped by circumstance by being bold. You know, what is the point of getting elected to just be another aspect of the postage stamp? What's the point? It's going to change nothing. And I tell you what this Jeremy Corbyn situation is also about psychologically. It's not only about hope. It's about parking with someone else and handing over responsibility to someone else for making the difference. What are people looking to Jeremy Corbyn for? Why don't they look to themselves? Why don't they get together and do something themselves? Why don't they work with people and talk to people? Why don't they go on phone-ins on radio? There are endless numbers all over the country every day, and talk about this and get shouted down by the host. Yeah, but come back and then go on another one. All these things are possible to get this information circulating and to point out to people of the left that actually they are in a myopic tunnel, and as well as everybody else, and unless they break out of it, they're going on and on and on, seeing the system that's controlling them, the system that's exploiting and oppressing them, as the way out of the system, so long as the nice people they support are running the system. It's not going to work like that. And people have to start taking responsibility for what's happening and what we need to do about it, and not handing it over to politicians or anyone else. So we'll wait for them to do it. You know, the cavalry's not coming. The cavalry's here, and it's you and me and all of us. And you know, in many ways, as politicians do many things that are outrageous and without integrity, yes. But in many ways, people put their responsibility onto politicians and say, why aren't you doing this? You should do that. You should do that. Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? Because you don't really want to do it.
Yeah, that's
People
it.
don't really want to do it. They want someone else to do it for them. That's how we got into this mess, and it's not going to get us out of it. And having a go at someone who is just saying, I wish Jeremy Corbyn would be more bold. I wish that he would say what he thinks about the EU and climate change and Israel, and not, you know, toe the party line, if you like. Then, well, what? Saying someone's not bold enough is a problem? What? It's not being bold enough that's got us into this mess. It's not being bold enough that's had us think, well, this politician, when he comes to power, it will all change. And he comes to power and it doesn't change. But now, like I say, we're years down the line and all that time has been lost. And this agenda's moved on. This is the time to stop looking to politicians and to stop looking to politics. And look to ourselves and what we can do about it. And that is, yes, non-violent non-cooperation with the system, but also in streetwise researched awareness of how that can be manipulated if we don't know what the agenda wants to create, the methods that they use to get there, and these personalities that keep turning up everywhere like Soros. It's no good looking to politicians to change it. They ain't going to change it. What I liked about Jeremy Corbyn is we were going to have some kind of debate that we weren't having before. But did I think that Jeremy Corbyn or anyone like that was going to change everything? No, of course not. How can Jeremy Corbyn change anything of real substance in this country, even if he becomes Prime Minister, if we're in the European Union? The vast majority of laws are made by dark suits in Brussels, not Jeremy Corbyn or any other Prime Minister. And yet we have a Labour Party that's supposed to be representing the working masses, as they're called in this country, that is campaigning, as are the Scottish nationalists, in the same way, to stay in an organisation that is crushing the opportunities, crushing the freedom of the people they're supposed to represent. I mean, okay, tell me how any Prime Minister of this country is going to change anything in Britain while still in the European Union. Isn't going to happen. And we need to get our heads around that. So we think, well, what else can we do then other than give our power away to politicians and hope they'll do something? They're not going to do anything. If the Labour Party was campaigning vigorously to get out of the EU and to take decision-making back to the land we call Britain, then that has credibility. Because if that happened, there would be more power in this country to make fundamental changes of justice and rights and freedoms. But that's not what they're doing. They're doing the opposite. So wait. Please wait for Jeremy Corbyn to come to power, even though most of his own party's against him, because in terms of MPs, because they're on the postage stamp. Wait, and then see what happens if we're still in the EU.
There's an old and a very crass American saying going back years. Wish in one hand and crap in the other hand, and see which one gets full the quickest. And it's absolutely apt when you're talking about that. There's been so many tweets on this. I'm just going to read a couple of them, David. It's exactly the top of the hour. We're live, so we can say it's 9 p.m. British summer time. David Icke is on the line to us. Go to davidicke.com. Let me tell you about the Worldwide Wake Up Tour, folks. It's absolutely incredible. After the Isle of Wight on the 4th of June, there's only about 30 tickets left for that, just over 30 now. There's no tickets left for Shepherd's Bush. But in July, David is in Australia. Incredible shows for Perth, Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne. Auckland in New Zealand in August. He's in September. In September, he's in America, New York, LA, San Francisco. He's in Europe then in October and November. Prague, Rimini, Bucharest, Tallinn and Amsterdam. He's in Manchester next January the 14th, which is fantastic. Don't get too excited, by the way, about all those Manchester tickets being sold. I've got a lot of Manchester United fans buying tickets. We're going to give you dog's abuse next 14th of January, mate. You're not going to be able to get through that show.
Leicester City are doing rather well, I seem to remember.
We're all happy about that. We don't have any private jokes on this show. David is not too fond of the football club I support. That's all I'm going to say.
No, that's not true.
Historically, you were. You were.
Manchester United were my second team in the 60s. The Bests, the Charltons, the Laws. The amazing team. I loved them. I just don't like what the present manager's done to Manchester United. That's all. I've got nothing against Manchester United whatsoever. But I was supporting Leicester City. 1962, I think, was the first time I watched them play live. And the idea that they had a chance of winning the top division, as they do now, was like, you are having a laugh. So this is fantastic, and a wonderful example of when people work together and give it everything and support each other, which is the Leicester model. You can overcome the great money-rich football clubs that would normally dominate football in this country, and that's what we need to do as a human race.
It's symbolic, isn't it? Because there will be some listeners now listening to this and they'll be going, oh Jesus, they're not really talking about football, are they? And we're not really talking about football. This is beyond football. This is really symbolic. It's an example. You can use it as, I don't know, could you use it as an analogy? You can use what they've achieved as an analogy, can't you?
Very much so. I mean, if you look what's happened, right? You've had Manchester United owned by an American mega rich family, the Glazers. Then you've had Manchester City, which is owned outrageously, I think. But the outrageous part of it is by fake royals who have basically taken over the oil of their country and denied it to the people and taken the money from it, and therefore they can use football clubs as their plaything. And you've got a Russian oligarch type guy owning Chelsea, and these kind of clubs have dominated the football in this country, and it was thought that they would dominate it forever. And here we have this team, Leicester City, yes, owned by someone with a lot of money, but not in the class of some of the others, who have come together, and they're waifs and strays. They're not, people who've been top players since they were young, most of them. They played in the lower divisions and somehow ended up in the Premiership with Leicester. They've been rejected by other teams. They've had to work their way up through smaller teams. Someone like Jamie Vardy, who's been such a big name this season. Not long ago, he was playing in the lower divisions. Before that, he wasn't even playing in fully fledged professional football. And yet somehow, because they've got this spirit, and they've worked together and they support each other, they've got this ethos, they have managed to be top of the league above all these people with all these vast amounts of money, with oil-rich owners and oligarchs. And it is symbolic, and it is a wonderful analogy for if the human race comes together in that same spirit of mutual support, puts down the fault lines that have been given to them to divide and rule, then we can achieve fantastic things, because the number of people that are behind this is tiny compared with the number of people being manipulated by it. And I mean really tiny globally. And this is what we need to do. And it's no good having a political leader, whoever he may be or she may be, while you've got a divided and ruled population at war with itself. What are they going to do? Don't matter how genuine they are, what are they going to do? We are the people that need to change it, not politicians, because they can't change it unless we change it. They can't, whoever they are.
Shall we get through a few emails and a few tweets? It's 5 minutes past the hour. David is going to be with us for another probably around about 45 minutes or just over 45 minutes. Lots of tweets coming in. One or two people getting annoyed about the tweets not being read out. Folks, it's David Icke here. We might as well have Elvis Presley or John Lennon in terms of this programme. There's so many of them, I'm not going to get to read them out. And like I did say already, if you want to see what other people are saying and engage with them, do that by putting Therichieallenshow, all one word, into the Twitter thing. Bang, press enter. You'll see everybody else's tweets there. So I'm going to read out a few of these, David. Paul says, I've been noticing posters up on busy sides of the road saying Google GCMAF, cancer cure for your family. We need to get the information out using different tactics. These are great ideas, says Paul. There's also a great campaign about geoengineering in the United States. We see billboards there as well. That's very good. I want to say,
this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to hear there's nothing I can do, because that is an excuse to do nothing. It's okay. This is the situation. This is the kind of thing we need to get out. And Google this is a good way of doing it, because it's something that will get people, or some people anyway, will do that. And then they'll see things they haven't seen before. But it's about saying, okay, this is the situation. These are the challenges. How do we overcome them? And human ingenuity, if it has the spirit of, I'm going to make a difference here and I'm not taking no for an answer, will overcome these challenges. And, you know, we have so much, so many things that we can do in terms of getting information out, and that's one of them. And how many people of us are there? I mean, there's 60-odd million people in this country. How many actually run it? What are we doing?
Yeah.
But because of divide and rule, people are fighting against each other, and tussling with each other, and not seeing that all the different groups that are divided and ruled are actually controlled by the same strings. I said in a video cast this week, do we think that the white middle class are the only people that are going to be microchipped?
Yeah.
Or Muslims are the only people that are going to be microchipped? Or Hindus? Or Jewish people? You know, it's for all of us. And thus, we need to see that and come together to stop it, which we can if we come together. And once we fall for this divide and rule, and you know what part of divide and rule is? A big part of divide and rule, you're saying something I don't like, so I'm going to attack you for it. That's divide and rule. We must be at peace with different people having different opinions. It's called freedom of speech. And if we don't give people the opportunity to say what they think without fear of the consequences, then we're playing the system's game. We are intimidating and censoring through intimidation the very people we should be working with and supporting. You know, I mean, okay, Jeremy Corbyn's doing a great job. One opinion. Jeremy Corbyn needs to be far more bold, which is my opinion. How are they incompatible? They're just different opinions. But no, we have to attack. Someone said something I don't agree with. Something said something I don't think. Attack. I'm outraged. Well, be outraged.
That's narcissism.
I want to make a difference, and to do that, people's opinions we have to be at peace with, even if they're not our opinions.
Absolutely.
That's called freedom.
It's brilliant, mate. It's absolutely right. I've said it so many times on this programme when people get fed up because there's a mainstream politician on or something like that. And I say, listen, I'm asking them the questions they're not asked on the BBC. Shut up about it. We're always going to do that. I'll get through a few more. Number of people amused that we were talking about football, but then they got it. They did get it. Let's see. Let's scroll down through a few of the tweets there. Martin says, if everyone listening to this commits to print out 100 flyers a month on their printer and put them through letterboxes. Brilliant, Martin Houston. Brilliant. And Martin is a terrific activist, by the way. I know he does a lot of great work in London. Brilliant stuff.
Human ingenuity, Rich, is infinite.
Yeah.
Human creativity is infinite. What triggers that, however, is the intent to make a difference, and not say, what can I do? There's nothing I can do. I'm just little me. In other words, I've persuaded myself it's okay to do nothing, and I feel all right about it. Once you make that intent, I'm going to do everything I can to make a difference here. Now, how can I best do it? Ingenuity and creativity will be triggered by that, and you'll find ways of doing it. Not only that, and ingenious ways of doing it that other people may have not thought of. And not only that, you'll attract to you other people of the same mindset through what I call vibrational magnetism. And suddenly the synchronicity starts to unfold with other people who have the same intent and want to make a difference. And the whole thing then starts to expand and expand and expand. What's missing in that sequence is genuine intent, not talking about it, not persuading ourselves there's nothing we can do, so there's nothing we have to do. Genuine intent, that's what's missing. And when people have that, you know, as some of the examples you're talking about, and there are many others, that intent triggers ingenuity and creativity to to achieve the intent of making a difference and informing people, not telling people what they have to think, giving them the opportunity to see something they wouldn't normally see.
Brilliant. Right, I'm going to read a few more tweets then. And I am going to get through a few of these now, Icke. Did you hear me? I'm going to get through a few of these tweets. There's so many of them. Polly says people will unite and fight for what is fair when they experience austerity and they can't afford their electronic devices. Somehow, Polly, I think David might come back to that in a minute. I think the system will always make sure they have those bloody electronic devices. Read Phantom Self. I'm telling you, people. Read Transphantomism. Get on to davidicke.com and order Phantom Self. Base Ninja, Martin Himanchi again, Scott Cornish. How many people said 20 years ago when cigarettes cost more than £5 a pack they would quit, but they didn't? Martin was on to say the fear factor of the Remainers is, do you want to be out of the EU? And for the Tories, have nobody to check them. Now, I'm going to ask you about the European Union in a second. Alex was on to say, Richie, on the European Union, surely if they wanted to stay so bad, they'd rig the vote. I don't want to think about that, but it is a concern I have. I'm going to put that to David in a second about these £9.3 million leaflet campaign, which apparently the leaflets were printed by a German company, which is an outrage. I mean, people should be absolutely chasing these people out of Westminster with pitchforks. That they would give that contract to a German firm and not look after people within this country. Dave will come back on that in a minute. Deb Fernandez, Deb is in New Zealand. John Pilger is saying the same as David. It's up to us now. How do we gain the necessary courage as individuals collectively, I think? Wayne says, any patriot who has the interest of the people of Wales, Scotland, Ireland and England should be at the gates of the enemy. He says, Sue tweeted the fullcircleproject.net. That's very interesting, Sue. Max Egan has been on the programme in the past talking about that. I like the fundamental idea of the Full Circle Project. I won't argue with that. It's not bad as well. I want to say hi to Tristan. I want to say hi to Sin. Now, Sin is a lady. She's in Greece and she's asking David about the possibilities of coming to Greece. Now, my great friend and colleague, did we or did we not talk about why Greece has been hammered the way it's been hammered, and it being the home of democracy, and that kind of segues into the European Union. I tell you what, can I take a quick 90-second break and then we'll get into that? What do you think?
Okay, mate.
Quick break then. David Icke is on the line to us. It's 14 minutes past the hour. We will come to the European Union now. The 23rd of June, that's when the vote will be here. Will it be rigged? Can we trust it to be a fair game? The Tories have spent £9.3 million on a leafleting campaign. Those leaflets were printed and were made in Germany. That's an outrage, isn't it, surely? What about Greece? Why was Greece targeted for such destruction in austerity by the Troika, the triangular institutions of the European Union, the IMF, the ECB and the European Union itself? More on that with David Icke when we come back after these.
Do you want to release the full potential of your soul consciousness and find out how to experience that power in all areas of your life now? Go to livingasyoursoul.com for free guidance with in-depth how-to articles, free healing meditations of creation recordings, free soul solutions, and much, much more. livingasyoursoul.com, making the profound practical.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Folks, it's very important that you support those who support the independent media. So support davidicke.com. Go to one of David's events. First of all, because you'll never see anything like it as long as you live. It'll change you. Bring somebody to one of David's events that hasn't ever seen anything like that before and give them a window onto something that is just going to absolutely blow their mind. Support davidicke.com, livingasyoursoul.com, dataclinic.co.uk. These are great people. They're helping keep the Richie Allen Show on the air. So thank them for it. If you can, use their websites, use their services. That's the way it works. Pay it forward. And if you can't support this radio programme, please go to richieallen.co.uk. There are PayPal details there. There are bank account details there. Doesn't cost the world to keep this programme on the air every month, but we barely make it to the end of every month. So please go to redistribution.co.uk, and if you haven't donated before, and if you can't afford it, do. If you can't afford it, ignore me. But listen to what David Icke said earlier on. If you can't afford it, do the things you can afford. Leaflets, printing some stuff off on your computer like Martin Houston suggested, attending a rally. But really meaning it. Don't sit on your bloody arse. Get up and do something. If you can't afford to support it, redistribution.co.uk. Go to davidicke.com/headlines. Terrific analysis of all the big stories in the mainstream media and in the independent media every single day of the week. David is our guest. This particular show, he's going to stay with me for another half an hour just over. We come to the European Union, David. I'm sure you would like to do an event in Greece, and maybe that's something you can look into. I know Jamie's doing great work there, and the company in South Africa was put on the tour. But Greece and the European Union and everything else, my friend, go ahead.
Well, when this whole Greece situation started to unfold, I said that I would go to Greece. I would talk there. I would pay all my own flights. I wouldn't want a penny for it, and I would pay my own hotels to get across the real background to what was happening in Greece. And I never heard anything back. But I mean, I'll be very happy to go and speak in Greece and anywhere else come to that, because this is a time when this information has to get out. And what's happening and has happened in Greece is what the European Union is really about. It's a tyranny. And they have a parliament purely so they can say it's a democracy, a democratic organization. But that's not where it all comes from. It comes from Brussels. It comes from the dark suit bureaucracy, which are appointed, not elected. And, you know, as I've been saying for all these years, the European Union is one of the, and it's the forerunner of a series of unions and groupings that are the second level of the planned global hierarchy. The first level is the world government, the world central bank, the world army, the world currency, cashless. I mean, look at it. And the single electronic currency. That's the world currency, and it's unfolding so fast. The euro is just a stepping stone to that. The euro was introduced to mop up all those other currencies, the guilder and the mark and the franc, on the road to the single electronic currency. And as one of the Rothschilds, in fact, I think two of the Rothschilds have said something similar: give me control of a nation's currency and I don't care who makes the laws. Yeah. Give me control of a global currency and I don't care who makes the laws anywhere. This is the whole point of it. And under that global structure are designed to be a series of unions. The European Union, we have, of course, the African Union. And what did the European Union come out of? It came out of a free trade zone. That was a stepping stone. That, you know, after the Second World War, if you'd have sold them what we have now, there'd have been another war to stop it, because people had fought the Second World War to stop the Nazis doing that. The Nazis had their own version of the European Union as part of their plan if they won the war, took over the whole of Europe. So what we have had is the selling initially of just a free trade zone. It's all for jobs and good for commerce. And then stepping stone, totalitarian tiptoe, you keep taking more and more power to the center. And, you know, the documents exist. I mean, Ted Heath, who was the key man to get us into what has become the European Union, signed us in when he was Prime Minister in the early 70s, but negotiated through the 60s the terms. He had to admit on a BBC radio interview years and years, decades later, when documents came out under the 30-year rule, government documents, that showed that actually the British fishing industry, the coal industry, the industrial base of Britain was negotiated away as part of the negotiations to go in to what was the common market or the EEC. And this is why those very industries have been run down ever since. Why is our fishing industry in an island nation being devastated and virtually destroyed by the European Union in cohorts with the British government of the day? Because it was negotiated before we even went in that those things would happen. Why? Because the initial blueprint of the European Union had as its basis, first of all, Europe being broken up into regions and the end of national sovereignty. That's what's at the end of this if we stay in. And the other thing was that different parts of Europe would specialize in different things. So what was negotiated as part of this blueprint is that Britain would specialize in finances, financial services, money, and what they call service industries. Look at the way the British economy's gone ever since, because it's all being done to a blueprint. Now, the idea is the constant centralization of power in Europe, the constant addition of more countries, and the situation where more and more laws and regulations are dictated from Brussels and fewer from the countries, exactly what's happening. And to do that, you have to not take no for an answer. Therefore, when we had the putting forward of the so-called EU constitution, which morphed into the Lisbon Treaty, when people like France and the Netherlands voted it down, they didn't take that as the will of the people. They simply changed the constitution to the treaty, kept 98% of the same things in it, and said, well, those referendums that voted against the constitution are no longer relevant because it's now a treaty. When the Irish voted against further integration and centralisation of power in Europe, they waited a bit, then had another referendum, and lots of manipulation obviously went on to get the vote they wanted. Name me once when a referendum has gone in favour of what the European Union wants, they've had another referendum to see if they really mean it. Never.
Yeah.
Because they're not taking no for an answer. Why? Because this is a project that's been unfolding since before the 50s, back into the 30s, if you take it far enough back. And therefore, what has happened is that David Cameron, because he feared the impact on conservative votes of UKIP, the UK Independence Party, he offered a referendum. He never thought it would come to that. One of the things I'm sure he thought is the last election was going to end up in another form of coalition. But of course, the Liberal Democrats got decimated. The Labour vote also collapsed compared with what it was supposed to be. And suddenly, Cameron finds himself in power by himself and stuck with this promise of a referendum that now he can't get out of. And so, as I said, when they announced the referendum, what's going to happen is they're going to lie through their teeth. They're going to set out to frighten people into not coming out because of all the endless horrific consequences they'll claim of not staying in, and the money that they will spend to persuade people to stay in is going to be vastly more than those trying to persuade people to stay out. And what we've had, you've mentioned it already, is this £9 million. I've had mine through the letterbox today.
I didn't get mine yet. I'm disgusted.
Yeah, I've not had time to rip it up and throw it away yet. But it's £9 million of taxpayers' money purely to persuade people to do what not only the government wants, but the bureaucrats want and the hidden hand wants. We've had restrictions put on government ministers, etc., who are trying to campaign to come out. We've had the whole of the British civil service, which is paid for by taxpayers, used completely to support the stay-in campaign. It is a complete and utter stitch-up. It's so blatant, and you talk about Cameron being kicked out because of financial things. My goodness me, he is so blatantly in a state of abusing power and abusing office over this. And the reason this is all going on, and don't, as you mentioned already, write off the good chance that there'll be manipulation of the vote as well.
Is it more than a good chance now? Because we've got people tweeting about the Scottish National Party, the Scottish referendum. Go ahead.
Exactly. But the reason all this is going on is they're desperate to keep Britain in, because that's the idea. The idea is not to have countries coming out, but to add more countries to it. And I tell you, if the British people vote to come out, it won't be left there. There'll be efforts to try to get another referendum to get a different vote. That's a gimme. That is, and people need to stay. They need to have their backbone in place to not fall for these things and vote another way, because in the meantime they've been frightened into changing their vote because of all the horrible things that are going to happen and what have you. And make no mistake, they'll make it as difficult as they can for people in this country, it's absolutely initially, to operate outside the European Union, because they'll want to make things as unpleasant and chaotic as possible, so that they can come back with another referendum and people say, oh no, well, let's get back in. And we have a situation where even Boris Johnson, who is has come out, the Conservative politician who's come out in favour of coming out of the European Union, who's saying that to renegotiate, to go back in.
Yeah, and he's one of the, and he's the highest profile guy, David.
Yeah, and so like I said earlier, if people get informed, the European Union is fundamental to this global structure, along with all these other unions that they are seeking to engineer out of other free trade areas, like those in the Far East and Australia, New Zealand, and those in other parts of the world. And so they're not going to let this go easily, because it's going against everything that the blueprint says should happen. And the British people have a chance here to make a statement against this system. And there's no doubt around Europe, I see that the Dutch have just voted not to have closer relations between the European Union and the
Ukraine,
American-owned Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so that there is this realization more and more of what the European Union really is, and people have the opportunity here to make a statement and throw a spanner in the work in the works of the blueprint. But this is interesting to me, and very not just symbolic but literal. You have this agenda for the centralization of power in Europe, and we have seen nothing yet, which will take basic freedoms away from people, not least what they call working people, people with who are not rich and full of it. And yet, how many times in the history of British politics have you had the Labour Party, the Scottish National Party, the Conservative Party in terms of its leadership, the Liberal Democrats, the Greens, all agreed on the same thing? all agreed that this is what must happen. We must stay in the European Union, an organization that is a stalking horse for a fascist communist state in Britain, in Europe, and all these parties that would normally argue about most things are all agreed that we should stay in this thing. That is how far the manipulation goes, but it's also how far the ignorance goes of what the European Union is really about. And you know what you've got is organizations that are campaigning. Friends of the Earth is one of them, that are campaigning for people to stay in, who are actually being funded by the European Union. The BBC gets funding from the European Union. What's going on here? I mean, the European Union is buying support from so many people and so many organizations. And the only opportunity we have to stand up to that list of parties that would normally disagree but are fully agreed on this, and all these other funded organizations from the European Union are saying we must stay in. All these financial organizations and clearly the governor of the Bank of England saying, oh, it'll be terrible if we come out. The only people that can stand up and say we're not having it are the people at the ballot box this time around. And it's an opportunity. And I tell you, the opportunity ain't going to come again, because they won't fall for this. This happened. They don't want it to happen. They're not going to fall for this again. They're not going to allow it to happen again. Thus, this is a major point in defending the freedom of within the borders of the United Kingdom from this edifice of fascist, communist, the same thing in terms of the experience of them, fascist, communist, superstate, bureaucratic nightmare called the European Union.
27 minutes to the top of the hour. Look how time goes. It's 26 minutes to the top of the hour. Once again, if you're in any of the cities or around any of the cities and you can make one of David's events on the Worldwide Wake Up Tour, you really have to do it, folks. Go to davidicke.com. All the ticketing information is there. Or just go to theworldwidewakeup.com, which is actually the official website for the tour itself, theworldwidewakeup.com. Phantom Self is brilliant. I've read it twice. It's an amazing reference guide for me, to be honest, as a presenter, as was The Perception Deception. If you haven't read that book, get it. Go to davidicke.com. It's incredibly good value for what it is. It really is. And David is our guest. We've got about another 20 minutes, not even probably, before we have to wrap it up. So I'm just going to, again, just kind of defer to the tweets again. Des was on Twitter to say, once they get enough immigrants here, they will close the borders and limit our travel. That's another big part of the programme, isn't it? Of course, flooding the European Union, Central Europe and further west into Britain with immigrants. Martin was on to say, the printing press thing is a great idea. Having something in black and white on a piece of paper can break through the programme. You can be your own printing press. I want to say hi to Hayley Silk, a good friend of mine who's listening now in Disley, which is a village south of Manchester. How are you doing, Hayley? Joanne Clayton, who's in Spain. Joanne says the EU vote will be rigged, surely. What with the mass postal votes and the changes? What's the point? It's already fixed. Now, that's the danger, Joanne. The danger is you get completely fed up and completely, not paranoid, but you preempt something. Don't preempt it. Go out en masse and vote to leave en masse, and then put it up to them then. Then dare them to rig the vote. Because Nikki is listening in Scotland, David. Nikki King, a good friend of ours as well. How you doing, Nikki? And, she talks about the Scottish National Party in a tweet that I can't just find at the moment, but also about the fact that, nobody in Scotland seems to believe that the vote, the Scottish referendum, nobody believes that it was a fair vote, David. Nobody.
Well, nor do I. Because again, Cameron, who's, he's not the brightest candle in the box, is he? He got himself in trouble over that as well, because he thought it was a gimme to start with, and then realised actually it's not. And I have great doubts about whether that was a fair vote, given the momentum and the number of people that were in favour of withdrawing from the United Kingdom. So, I understand why people doubt, because so do I.
And we never saw... How long have you been in journalism? It's got to be 35, 40 years anyway. I mean, you've never stopped being a journalist. You're as much... I suppose you're more of a journalist now than you ever were when you're at the BBC. But we've never seen... And I covered elections in Ireland in 2002. I didn't have much to do in 97. I was only coming into radio then, but I covered the general election in Ireland in 2002, and I've covered lots of other elections around the world. We've never seen polling companies get it so wrong. And one of the most laughable bits of broadcasting was the Sky News programme with Kay Burley about 3 or 4 months ago, when, even further back actually, when all the polls got it wrong as well in the general election here, which suggested a completely different result. And we've never seen him get it as badly wrong as that. And what was extraordinary was all the polling companies put out their CEOs, and they all came on the air to say, oh yeah, we've got to refine our methods. I smelt a lot of bullshit there, David.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know what, when you look at the United States, where people vote electronically, I mean, it's laughable. You press the button, you don't know what it's registered with. It's not even like a cross on a piece of paper.
No.
You can see a cross on a piece of paper, at least. Whether they're going to count it or not, that's another thing. But you can see the cross on the piece of paper. But voting electronically, and they'll try to bring that in as well here, I'm sure. But that is a gimme for manipulating elections.
And it's due to come in here.
People stand for it. People stand for it, though.
You know, it's funny you say that. The first election I covered in 2002, I was at the Count Centre, and our listeners in Waterford City will know that's in it was traditionally always in St. John's Park in the Butler Community Centre. And I was mesmerised, David, by the enormous, avalanche of papers. Avalanche. And you had young men and women from all different backgrounds, but they were vetted, sitting there doing the count. And I thought, yeah, that's about right, that. And at the time, people were saying, in a few years' time now, we won't have any of that. You'll just press a button. And even then, I wasn't anywhere near as aware as I am now about what's going on. But even then, I thought, that can't be right, Anybody can manipulate that then. How easy is it to do that? But yeah, it's coming in. And it's coming in here. It's planned to come in here. So would you, speaking to Joanne's point, they're going to rig it anyway. We can't be bogged down by that, so we can't. We've got to go and take part in this particular referendum.
All people can do is do their best, and that's to make their effort to vote to come out. What happens outside of their control happens, but we've got to do the first thing, which is vote to come out. And what happens then happens. But for sure, if people in large numbers don't vote to come out because they say it's rigged anyway, well, you don't need to be rigged, does it? If enough do that, this is a real big deal, because it will throw a spanner in the works of this blueprint. Because what I described earlier about the emerging centralisation of more and more power in the European Union. It's not meant to stay where it is. It's meant to go on and on and on. And this is why it's just extraordinary that all these parties are all at one in saying, stay in this blatant nightmare for anyone with half a brain cell on active duty if they do a fraction of research into the background. It's just extraordinary. And it's the people that have the opportunity to do what they can to make sure that we do throw that spanner, but we certainly won't do it if we don't go and contribute thinking, well, it's going to be rigged anyway. Well, like I say, where's that going to get anybody?
Yeah, it's an excuse, isn't it? Yeah.
To be honest, when you're talking about voting for political parties, well, for me, that it's just giving credibility to a rigged system. But unless someone does turn out as actually genuinely different, then that does give more credibility to actually the vote. But this is a referendum on in or out, and therefore, unless it is rigged, if more people, especially substantially more people, vote to come out, well, then they're going to find that very difficult to overcome.
Hey, David, speaking to your comments about voting in America, David Stanford, David, welcome to the programme, on Twitter says it's a George Soros company that makes the ballot machines for the US. Now, I know David will know that. Yeah, I mean that's just outrageous. Alex Doust says on Twitter, voting on your phone will be next. How easy electronic votes are to rig, and you can use the excuse that it's only an error if you're caught.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
The thing about Soros is here you have a billionaire who couldn't give a damn about human rights, who couldn't give a damn about equality, who couldn't give a damn about fairness, certainly couldn't give a damn about people that those of the left represent. He's the one that's behind all these organizations that have hijacked the so-called progressive left in the United States, and he's the one that orchestrated through the same organizations the Arab Spring and all what's come out of that. People just have to get informed. How many people that are at Washington now as we speak in this demonstration, and will be all week, have any idea of the connection of George Soros to what's going on?
No idea, no.
No idea. So important. Otherwise, we get played like a stringed instrument through pure ignorance. And it's also naivety in that they wouldn't do that. No, that could never happen. They would never do that. And the other thing is they would never get away with that. They'd be found out. What, by the mainstream media? You're having a laugh? And by the way, they have been found out by the alternative media. But, the alternative media you never look at. So it's in our hands. We have the numbers. But do we have the intent? Do we have the will? And do we have the knowledge to do what is necessary to bring this to an end?
Daniel Ford on Twitter. Daniel, how are you? Daniel is a big supporter of David's work, an avid reader of David's books. People need to see Muslims are not going to run the world. ISIS is run by the elite. The elite want to run the world, not ISIS. Daniel is saying that they're basically a tool of the agenda, which of course they are. It's not too extreme then, is it? By the way, there have been a number of people talking about the BBC licence. I'm going to say what I said again yesterday. I'm very honest. Since returning to England from Spain a few years ago, I've never paid for the BBC television licence. I'm not hiding that fact, but I'm not encouraging anybody else to do it either. It's irresponsible to do that. You do what you want to do for yourself, but be informed about the consequences of it before you do it. Don't listen to anybody telling you what to do. In 25, 26, 27 years, David Icke has never told you to do anything, ever. Never said you should do this or you should do that, ever. Not when it comes to legalities, never anything like that. I don't pay it and I'll never pay it. Are we seeing the mainstream media morph into something even more terrible than it ever was? And I've used this term that keeps coming to mind. I don't know where I got it from. I'm plagiarising subconsciously. Somebody said something years ago. They are now a clear and present danger, the media, not only to our security and our well-being, but to our health, because of the information they suppress about medicine. I mean, you're there on the Isle of Wight with your great friend Mike Lambert, a great man, top man at the Shen Clinic. They're suppressing these things that could help us. They're giving us information that could harm us deliberately. They've never been as malevolent as they are now. Would you agree with that?
Well, yes, but they're being squeezed as well. And we come back to backbone. When people say the mainstream media is biased and the mainstream media is this, the mainstream media is that, all true. But the vast majority of journalists, as you well know from your background, are not doing it from knowledge that they're manipulating anybody. They're doing it from ignorance. Some of the most ignorant people in terms of what's really happening in the world are journalists and politicians. It is extraordinary, but true. Lower level politicians and what have you. And even some higher ones, more than a few higher ones, are utterly clueless. I mean, when you read that Tom Bauer book about Tony Blair, the way the cabinet, people who were supposed to be the government during the Blair years and the run up to Iraq were kept completely in the dark about what was going on. It was being run by Blair and people in the shadows. So you can be in a cabinet and be clueless about what's really going on. That's the way it works. And Journalists certainly are. And journalists, for me, mainstream journalists, they suffer from what I call the arrogance of ignorance. They have not researched the subject. So when they turn up at a situation, be it a terrorist attack or whatever, all they've got to go on is repeating the official story. And thus they get the official story from the official sources and then repeat them, and they call it journalism. Now, where you may have a journalist who will want to ask other questions and question the official story, well, they've been jumped upon long ago. And most of them filtered out. In fact, almost all of them have been filtered out. So even, and I've talked to journalists from time to time, and they have questions about this, that, and the other in terms of things that have happened in the world and whether the official story is right or not. But they'll never say that publicly on air or question it on air, because they won't last long in the job if they do. So here you have a complete stitch up of a whole profession where they are repeating the official story of everything and are too frightened, even those who have the intelligence to question, too frightened to actually say what's on their mind and ask the questions they'd like to ask, because they know the consequences of doing so. And so what you've got more and more is a completely compliant mainstream media. Now, of course, key people within it who are driving it will be doing it in awareness and will be doing it on purpose, but they're a small minority compared with the vast majority of journalists who are compliant, either through fear of not being compliant or the fact, this is the most of them, they are clueless about what's really happening in the world. When you see them being told about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which turn out to be completely not true and provably made up on purpose to sell a war, and then at the same time, they will dismiss people questioning 9/11 as conspiracy theorists and nutters, when not only the same agencies and same governments told them about both the official story of 9/11 and that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but the same people did in Blair, and Bush, and the two administrations. But even then, what would happen if a mainstream journalist questioned 9/11 and the official story? They wouldn't last long in the job, would they?
It wouldn't last a wean time, no.
It's happened to journalists, one or two, who've done that and are no longer with the organisation for much longer after that. So this is the double whammy. It's ignorance and the arrogance of ignorance. And what I mean by that is I'm a journalist, so if that was happening, I would know. And also fear of the consequences of speaking your mind if you do, in fact, have a mind to speak.
We're just about up on time, so I want to go back to the tour, because it's imminent now. I'm going to give the listeners a bit of a giggle. David went to a hotel, as any professional operating at his level would do, to rehearse and to time basically what he's doing, because his time is finite on stage. He's planning on doing about 10 hours every time he gets up on stage. What's pretty funny about that is one of the most important things that he was doing when he went to a hotel was to try and take not information, but to leave things out, because he was going way over the 10 hours. That, by the way, is mind-boggling. I've said that to a few people in the last few days whom, like me, are broadcasters or have been broadcasters, and they just think it's amazing. Most of us try to struggle to fill a 2-hour radio show with content, and there you are with trying to whittle things down to 10 hours, which I think is absolutely amazing. I said at the beginning of the programme, you must be incredibly excited about it. I know you're really energised. I mean, I obviously know you very well, and you're always in good form. To be fair to you, you're always in good form, even though you do get, like all of us, you get a bit tired from time to time, but you're always in the best of form whenever I talk to you. But you're really, really up for this, aren't you? I mean, you're almost like a prize fighter. You can't wait to get out there now.
Yeah. Well, I never do a tour, a speaking tour, unless I've got a hell of a lot more to say than the last one, and there's no point really. I just don't go and repeat all the stuff I've said before. It has to move on, and that's why it's normally, well, actually, in terms of a world tour, it's 2011 since the last time I did it. And I went to this hotel. Simply, I only did 2 sections of the talk because, and it's not a rehearsal in the sense of getting the wording right. I ad lib it when I'm on stage, and what I say, what comes out comes out. But the key thing is getting an idea of how long it is, and these 2 sections would have actually caused us to offer breakfast next morning
as part of the deal.
I've had to be a bit ruthless and cut it down, but leaving all the best bits in, and the new things and the important things and what have you. And what it is, it's a massive dot connection exercise, because people can get the fine detail from the books, but what I try to do is take the pixels and show the picture. And when you do that, all these things that happen in the world, which have happened in what we call history, that are happening now, the nature of reality, the nature of consciousness, world events, banking, global warming, all these things, they all fit together in a coherent whole to show that, people see conspiracies everywhere. No. I basically see one conspiracy with endless faces. And the dots in the talks are the endless faces. But the talk itself connects the endless faces to show one face. It's the culmination, up to this point anyway, of 26 years of work. So I'm not surprised there's a lot of information I've had to leave out, because there is so much information to get across. And the key to it is to show that A is not alone, B is not alone, Z is not alone, H is not alone. They're all in the same alphabet of manipulation and tyranny. And when people see that, it all starts to make sense. Got to get beyond the dots and see the picture. And that's what this list of parties, Labour, SNP, Conservative Party, Liberal Democrats, Greens, the vast majority of them, some will know what's going on, but the vast majority of them, this is the problem. They see the European Union as a dot. It's a dot in a picture. And when you see the picture, and if they did see the picture, the genuine ones, which is basically most of them, really, in terms of not wanting to live in a tyranny, then they'd all start campaigning to come out, because they'd see what the European Union really is. But in a dot in itself, they can support that, and that's what the talks are designed to do, to show how the dots make the picture, and what the picture really means, and what it means for humanity. And what it means is we've got to get our asses in gear pretty damn quick.
Well, I've never seen any. I was at Wembley 2014. Never seen anything like it. Spent the following show. I came back and did a show. I spent about a half an hour talking about it. It was exhilarating, energising, mind blowing, important. It was fantastic, and I can't wait to see you here in Manchester. It's surprised some people. I've said I'm not going to be at Shepherd's Bush. I'm not, because this programme has to keep going as well, and I'm just so looking forward to Manchester. That being said, don't be surprised if I don't pop up somewhere in Europe and surprise you when you're around Europe. But just before we go, and we are just a bit running out of time.
You ought to come to Tallinn in Estonia.
That'd be great, huh?
And bring about 15 overcoats, because how cold it's going to be at that time.
It's going to be freezing there.
Yeah, absolutely. I've spoken the Ukraine once. I'm still thawing out.
You've still got those thermal underwear on. Now, just before you go, it's very likely that we might not talk again before you set out. So break a leg, as they say in theatrical circles, even though it's certainly not theatre, what you're going to be doing. Have an amazing time doing it. The people are in for a treat that are going to see you doing it. I know you've talked about when you're in Australia, when you're in the States, the possibility in between shows, which I think is a bit mad because you're going to be up to your eyes anyway, but you might phone into the show and have a chat with us. If you do that, that'll be absolutely brilliant. Just to say, folks, davidicke.com, the worldwidewakeup.tour.com, get a ticket, go and see him. Love everything you do, mate, and thanks again for all the support that you give all the independent media shows and publications on the headlines page every day, but particularly for the continued support of this programme. It means more to me than words will ever say. Thanks very much for everything.
Cheers, Rich.
Look after yourself, buddy. Talk soon. The great David Icke on the line to us from the Isle of Wight. Fantastic stuff. Go to davidicke.com/headlines and go to the worldwidewakeup tour.com. That is it for the programme.